Yo, welcome to FKU Africa Podcast. This is your host here, Maneza F8, coming to you live. I'm here in South Africa, in Cape Town, man, in the mother city. That's where I'm at. That's where we're pushing, man. We're pushing black excellence every time. We're pushing African unity and African excellence. That's what we're about, man. So, the guest that I'm having today is no short of that, man. He embodies whatever we've been talking about to this podcast throughout the 2 years that we've been building. So yeah, man. Welcome to my brother Kweku Essien. How are you, my brother?
Very good, very good. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, man. This is your home. Anytime you want to come and talk to us here at FKU, you are welcome, my brother. Don't even hesitate. Anytime you have something to talk about, come and let's talk, man. Just tell my people where you at and what are you busy with.
Yes, I am currently in Accra, Ghana, sunny Accra, and I work in the real estate sector in Ghana, but really across Africa in Ghana, Nigeria, and also a little bit in South Africa as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So in the real estate, you mentioned that you work mainly with people from diaspora and trying to bridge the gap between us here in Africa and brothers and sisters in diaspora. We're talking Europe, America, islands, everywhere. So let's talk a bit about that, man. How did this come about?
Sure. So Cecil Global, brainchild of me and two other gentlemen. I'm a co-founder of the company, and I serve as chief commercial officer for the company. And Cecil
Beautiful.
Global's main aim really is to bring trust and transparency into the property sector in emerging economies, which include Ghana, Nigeria, and as well to utilize innovative thinking and technology to achieve this. And so we've thought very long and hard about what some of the issues are, what are the problems with respect to buying property in the continent, and this problem obviously is for the locals as well, but certainly also for those in the diaspora who really are not on the ground and sometimes are susceptible to fraud and scams by
Mm,
various individuals, even sometimes their own family members. And so we sought to create a platform where we verify the property developments that are on our platform. Today we work with about 70 developers in Ghana. We have about 7,000 developments as well. Similarly, in Nigeria, we have about 50 developments, about 5,000 developments. Close to $1 billion worth of assets on the platform for sale for transactions. And we started with those two countries. Obviously, I'm Ghanaian myself,
yeah.
and Nigeria is right there as well. And so we
Mm,
we decided to. Those are two very similar markets, but those two markets are the two markets with the highest amount of remittance inflows into Africa. Nigeria gets
yeah.
the total remittance into Africa. It's about $48 billion every year. Nigeria
Wow.
gets half of that. Half of that amount goes to Nigeria. The next
Wow.
closest country is Ghana at about 3 billion, right? So those two countries get a good amount of have a good amount of diaspora who are very interested in sending money back home. And we
Mhm.
found through surveys and reports that about 30-40% of that amount goes to real estate. People buying land, people
Yeah.
building their home over a period of time. Sometimes they're buying property themselves. And what you find is that a lot of the professionals now living abroad would prefer to work with agents, especially if there's one that is a trusted brand. And so that's what
Yeah.
Seso is, a trusted brand. And outside of just Ghanaian and Nigerian diaspora, we found that there's a very what's happening, which is very exciting, is that the connection between the continent and our brothers and sisters, the African American cohort and other blacks abroad, in the Caribbean, etc. That connection is growing much stronger than it has been in the past. Unfortunately, obviously, propaganda, media has sort of sought to bring
Yeah.
us apart. right? But I like that we are on a podcast like this where
Yeah,
we
yeah,
educate people about what the opportunities on the continent. And then as well, social media has helped a lot. I will say obviously social media has its negatives, but what it's done is that people can post about them having fun in Joburg,
yeah.
having fun in
Yes,
Nairobi, having fun in Accra.
yeah,
Their friends see it and they're like, "Whoa, this is Africa. This is what's going on here," and it attracts them to come to the continent, right? And so, a lot of these things have been very beneficial for us as a company. And I think what I was mentioning to you just before was that I was just off a call with a partner. We just finished off a 8-day tour in Ghana called the Ghana Property Tour, where they stayed at a
uh-huh.
very nice hotel. We took them around to various different developments in
Where
Accra.
were they coming from?
They were all African Americans, all coming from the
Okay,
states, different parts of the
all right.
states. And these
Ah,
are people who've never been to Ghana in their life. A lot of them have never been to Africa in their life, uh,
wow.
um, and decided that they would come on this tour. And it was very life changing for a lot of them.
How
And
many
we
were
got
they?
so this particular tour was 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
We've done another tour which is also 8 people.
Mm.
Actually, in Feb, we have a group of about 100 people coming.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and so we believe that this number is going to skyrocket. And obviously,
Mm.
Ghana has become very popular. But and even though I'm very selfish, I'm Ghanaian, but I
Yeah,
believe that this will spread all across. Once people, especially, the ancestry.com, all of these things are helping us. People understand, oh,
yeah,
I'm from Cameroon. Oh, I'm from Nairobi. All of a sudden, there's that affinity to these places. And so I think
yeah. True.
maybe a lot of things are starting in Ghana. We had a good campaign to bring people to the continent, but I think over time they're going to flesh out all over the continent, and so that's where the opportunity is. That's what I
Very
think.
true. Yeah, yeah. You've mentioned quite a lot. So, what I'm interested in is the process of getting a property. Let's say I'm sitting in Boston, Massachusetts, in America, or I'm sitting in New York. I'm wondering how can I get a property that I can visit now and then, or probably end up staying in Ghana. What is the process? What do I do first to make sure that I get myself a property?
Yeah, so obviously, first step always is visit our website, www.ceso.global. We have a bouquet of options there that you can peruse through, get educated on. We also post a lot of videos on YouTube as well, with influencer partners that give a good education
Mm,
of what is out there, what a lot of the questions that you have. But of course, when you come through our website and you request for more information, one of our agents will reach out to you. We have agents on the ground. We also have agents abroad as well who can speak to you and answer
all
sort of the
right.
relevant questions that you have. And of course, depending on who you are, you may want to come to the country yourself, but we can always
Yeah.
do virtual tours for you. And what that is, we'll get on a Zoom or WhatsApp, go visit the
Mm,
site, showcase what it is, so you can
mm.
see this is real, this is happening,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
as well, right? And so I'll say that we have had some people who've never come to the country and bought property. Most of the time, they're
Wow.
buying land. Yeah, they buy
Mm-hmm.
land, without coming. A lot of those
Mm.
folks maybe may also have someone on the ground who just goes there to visit for themselves. But we have had
Yeah.
people, especially with land. Land is much more
Mm.
easier to sell without being there, I believe.
Mm.
Uh,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah, and also those may be more interested in investment units from a reputable developer. Sometimes are willing to just say, "I'll buy it" without coming there as well. But for the most part, what we are finding is people are coming in. For a lot of people who come to our site, these are individuals who either have been to Ghana or know but they'll be in Ghana soon, and are like, "I want to know what's out
Mm.
there." Right, and so
Yeah.
visit our site, and then we can run them through the process. And so even on this tour we ran them through an education on with a lawyer. So we had a lawyer run through, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what you require, especially if you're a foreigner. These are the things you need to
Yeah.
understand before buying a
Mm.
property in Ghana. We even had one of our clients come there to speak with the group as well. A client who's an African American himself, lived in
Yeah.
Brooklyn all his life, and then
Yeah.
decided to come live in Ghana with his wife.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and so he gave a great story about why he did it. How his wife is
Mm.
the one who really wanted to do it. He didn't want to move to
Wow.
Ghana, but his wife really wanted to move to Ghana. They came
Mm.
here, and then at first he was 0% chance he would live in Ghana, and then it became 95%, and he bought a $300,000 penthouse in Accra, right? And
Wow.
so we take you through those options. There are also mortgage options if you require it, but a lot of the
Mm.
developers do offer payment plans. So usually over 2 to 3 years, sometimes over 5 years, you can pay off the property. So it's almost like a Islamic mortgage in a way. You can pay Islamic loan. You can pay it off over a period of time. Uh,
Yeah.
and so there are different ways to navigate these things, and we can be your advisor on that. And we don't charge the customer for this service. We make our money once we close the sale from the developer.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's important to
Okay.
put that out there that we're not going to charge you. We just want to sort of assist you through that process and ensures that
Yeah.
we are doing the best service we can to ensure that you are happy with us. We close the sale, and then you tell your friends and family about how wonderful the service was.
It's good that you mentioned about this thing about not charging, because that was going to be my next question about what are the packages. If I'm sitting wherever I'm at, I'm thinking of joining this group through seso.com, which I will put on the description. Uh, I was wondering about how much will it cost me for you guys to start initiating it. But now you made it clear that there's no cost in initiating. You will initiate and go through the point of sales and until the sale is done, and then that's where you're going to start talking to the developers and get your percentage, which is good,
Yeah, hundred
which is
percent. That's
good.
that's how we
Mm,
prefer to run the business, and obviously nothing against. We know some agents will charge you ahead of time, and that's their business
mm,
model. But we decided that, and especially understanding what goes on abroad for the most part. I lived in Canada
yeah.
for a bit. They don't really charge. They don't charge you for that particular service, and so we want to sort of provide, especially for the diaspora,
Mm,
that similar level of service and ensure that
mm.
we are aligned with them as partners to close this sale, right? So
That's
that's really
good because the other thing that I like about this, it develops a lot of trust between you and and the person that you're going to be dealing with. Because if you put money in front, there's going to be problems when it comes to trusting. Because me from here in South Africa, sending money to Ghana, not knowing if the deal is going through or what. That's gonna be to be tricky for me because we know what kind of scams that are happening throughout these internets, my man. So it's really good that you're transparent about that, and we make sure that you provide services first, and then the money will follow.
yes, sir.
That's 100%. So what led you to follow this path? What interest? What sort of interest you to this?
Yeah. Great question. So in my former work, I lived in Canada quite a bit, and I worked there. My employer at the time also had African roots. They're Kenyan background, but Canadians
Okay.
themselves, and they always sought to understand, how to bridge the gap between Canada and Africa. It's not always that
Mm.
simple. Canadians are really only focused mostly on mining and charity when it comes to
Yeah.
Africa, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so, but wanted to see whether there are other avenues we could work together. And so that it led me to study a company called Terranet, which is a company
Mm.
anyone can Google. It's a $3 billion company today, and they digitized the land registries in Canada, right? So they
Okay.
digitized the land registries there,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's operating. It works, and we wanted to understand how we could bring that technology to the continent, to Kenya, to Rwanda, etc., Uganda, and so just studying that, researching that, I understood really, what the problem statement is on the
Mm.
continent.
Yeah.
Certainly, we have a lot of problems, perhaps on the continent, but I also view those as opportunities. So there's a way to
Yeah.
also view that as well. And in my mind, land is a big, big opportunity and problem on the continent. And by that I
Very
mean
true.
understanding who owns what land, who is selling it,
Yeah.
what price, like all these questions that you have. And it's a very, very big
Mm.
purchase. It's not something you just
Very.
go into out of like it's something where you require a lot of information before you make the
Yeah.
decision. And
And the
sometimes that
law and understanding the laws.
understanding the laws, everything else. And so
Mm.
there is a lot required into getting this transaction done. And it is for most people the largest purchase they'll ever make in their life, right? So
Mm.
when you think about it in that terms, if there isn't trust and transparency in this system, how can you even transact? Who wants to transact? You're even afraid. You'll be so afraid
Mm.
even to transact. A lot of people have been bitten by this as well, especially our brothers in the diaspora. Maybe they make some
Yeah.
money, they want to invest, but they're afraid to invest. I'm sure you know a lot of people like this who are like, man,
I know.
I'm not going to invest in the car. I'm not going to buy land. I'm not going to buy property. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to deal with the hassle and the potential scams and the heartbreak that comes with buying property. But I feel like that is taking us back, you know,
Yes.
and there are actually people, lots of chiefs, families that own hundreds of acres of land on the continent. The continent
Yes.
can fill in Europe, China, and the States in there, right? All of these people should be billionaires. When you think about it,
Yeah.
all of them who own this
That's
land
true.
should be billionaires, right? And the only reason they are not is because the systems are not put in place to ensure that these are transparent transactions. And so, understanding this, it was just some luck, some serendipity. I met a partner of mine, an American. His name is Daniel, and he had gotten a
Mm.
grant to digitize the land registry in Ghana. And so I was just discussing the company Terranet with a friend of mine. He overheard me
Mm.
and then said he had also been studying that same topic. And it's very funny, probably the only two people in Ghana who knew that company, right? And so we met over time and over a few years decided that we wanted to sort of start this company. And it's been a journey in itself, but I think one that is very fulfilling because land, like air and water, touches everything. It's so ubiquitous that you don't even forget
Yes.
how important it is. Same way you forget you are breathing, same way you forget that water is that important to your life. Land is so important, and
Yes.
so ensuring that that level it's done properly, I think it opens up a lot more on the continent, not just capital wise, but even building communities that are suitable to the way in which we want to live. So that's the reason why this company was started, really more than anything. And obviously we all watch Wakanda, and it's very nice to see it on the screen. But I
Yeah.
think for all of us, we want to live in it. We want to live in it. It makes us yearn
Yeah.
for how do we build this. And I think sometimes we have to even get some of the boring parts done right so that we can live this exciting life that we want to see in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, there's true. There's too much truth in that because Africa is very rich and is filled with possibilities to be even more richer than it is. But the thing is now we have people who cannot really execute and govern the way that they should govern because we have a large and large and large pieces of land who still belongs to the people who are not Africans. And these companies that like the one that you're talking about that is from Canada, a lot of Canadian companies even here in South Africa who are in charge of mines and huge amount of lands where they plant grapes and all these kind of things that we should be doing as Africans, but we don't have resources and we don't have that kind of a mind to start from scratch to develop a land. Even the piece that we are living in, you can start from there and develop and make it into something that is a little bit bigger. So I really applaud you guys for what you are doing. Another question is, with that being said, is because I heard that you're talking about you had 8 people who were busy there who came to Ghana and you give them a tour for amount of time. Is it a tourism part aside from a real estate side, or they just come together?
I think they come together. I think they come together. So, one story I heard in Rwanda, and I always like the story. The is President Kagame there
Mm.
wanted to build a hotel in his country. After the wars, the
The
genocide.
wars, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
and decided that he needed a five-star hotel to attract high net worth individuals to come to his country.
Mm.
And a lot of he tried to get financing. They laughed at him, the international financing bodies, because they said there are other things that are more important than a hotel. And you know what, maybe
Yeah.
fair enough to them, but in the end, I think he proved himself right, because once he built that hotel, people of a certain stature then started to come to this country, and
Started
then
to
from
go
there,
there.
yeah, decided to go there. Even if just okay, I've never been to Rwanda. Okay, let me come. Now I'm in this nice
Mm.
hotel in Rwanda, in a place that I thought would be dead and buried, right?
Mm.
And then sort of they come, and then from there they maybe decide to buy a home themselves, or they decide to start a business, right? And so in the same vein, and you see even Rwanda, they have the Visit Rwanda, they have the whole campaign. It's based on
Mm.
tourism, but for them, their
Yeah.
longer term strategy is not to make money off just tourism.
Of tourism, yes.
Is to
Mm.
make money off the intellectual capacity of the people that are coming into the country. And so for me,
Mm.
it's a similar vein. The tourism that we are doing here, obviously they'll be seeing properties, and I want them to see the properties and see which ones make
Mm.
sense for them, which ones they might buy. But I think what becomes very interesting, and you talked about lack of execution, lack of
Mm.
governance.
Governance. Mm.
I think what has happened, unfortunately for us as a continent, obviously we there was already the one brain drain of the slavery taking a lot of
Mm.
strong and intelligent people out of the country, and then
Yeah.
of course during the maybe the turmoil of post-colonial times, lots of wars, lots of issues that came because of the colonial times. A lot of folks left the country as well and went to Europe, the States. So we've had a big brain
Mm.
drain over these past, yeah, decades,
Yeah.
hundreds of years. And now what we are looking to do with the tourism angle and with the property angle is to say, come back to the continent and let's have a
Mm.
reverse brain drain, right?
Bring your brains.
Bring your brains, bring your capital. Because you're exactly
Mm.
right. I don't think we need Western money. I wouldn't say no to it all
Mm.
the time, but I don't think we need
Yeah.
it. We don't need it
Mm.
to get the continent to a certain level. You know,
Yeah.
Black Americans themselves spend $2 trillion in the United States. Let's bring some of that money back
Yes.
into the continent, right? I talked about the remittance, $48 billion. Let's try and direct that money to certain products, to certain projects, etc. Right? And so it's about funneling these assets. Because yes, it was bad that they left. We are
Mm.
not happy that they left, but they are there, and a lot of them
Yeah.
have become very successful themselves. Let's connect the continent back to them and see what we can do amongst ourselves before we can get support from somewhere else. And it's better to get support than to get help from somewhere else,
Yeah.
or charity from somewhere else, right? We are
Yeah.
much more
Because
positioned.
yeah, that reminds me of the quote from Thomas Sankara that says, "Who he feeds you controls you." That
Yes.
yeah, that's what he said. So we don't want people who are going to support us. We want people who are going to collaborate with us.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes, yeah, because if we accept donations and support, that's gonna be easy for us to get controlled again and go back to the same situation that we were in the previous years. So I like what you are saying, talking about bringing the capital back and start to invest in Africa, and start to rebuild, because Africa is still a very very long way to be where it should be, to be the Wakanda that we all want it to be.
Yeah.
There's still a very long way to that, but with these kind of projects that you guys are running, it's going to go there. Nevertheless.
Yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, I'm complete agreement with you. Collaboration, that was this is a great word actually to utilize, and it's exactly that, and I think it's an exciting time. I do know sometimes it can get when you think about some of the issues the continent has had, you can feel a bit pessimistic. But I think
Hmm.
that there's a deep optimism when we think about even the conversation like this between ourselves and the conversations that are happening all across. You can see that there's a great enlightenment happening, and people are understanding obviously they already understood the problems, but are now beginning to understand that, oh, those can be turned into opportunities. There's solutions
Into
for these.
opportunities, yes.
Exactly. And so these
Hmm.
conversations that are happening, and I think they're happening at a great time now, in a time where there's relative peace across the continent, uh,
Yes.
and which is usually the most important element towards any type of growth. And so, yeah, I'm quite excited about it all. And it was very interesting to be with the group that came, because they
Mm.
gave me some good insights as to what they're thinking as well. And I think if it can be a healthy marriage between the two, that hey, I was in the diaspora, I understand this and this and this, and I'm
Yeah.
here, I have this and this. There's a level of respect amongst both sides. There's something beautiful that can be created for sure.
Yeah. True. So what do you think about the concept of the Kwame Nkrumah of uniting Africa and making sure that Africa is having one governance and Africa trades to other Africans without any paperwork, any sort of visas and borders? Or what? Because that concept it would be beneficial for you because you'll be reaching a lot of huge market without has a hassle of documents and all this and that.
Yeah. I was just actually chatting with someone about AFTCA, which is the trade policy that was signed on by a lot of the African states, stating that they are
Mm.
happy with free trade between each other. Now the question is, how do we get to that point of actually implementing and executing this,
To
which is usually
implementing, yeah.
always the hard part, right? So I can say that, of course, I would love that the continent I could freely travel to anywhere, we could freely trade between each other. I
Mm.
would love that to happen for sure. It makes a lot of sense for my business. But obviously, I want to try and
Mm.
be a bit realistic with what are the first baby steps we can have to get to
Yeah,
that point, right? And it's very
exactly what I was
interesting that
saying. The execution.
yeah,
What is the
yeah,
execution?
yeah,
Because the
exactly,
bill is
exactly. The
the
execution.
bill is there. What is the execution?
Yeah. That's always the hardest part. So I'll say with our business, and it's actually very interesting. Lots of Nigerians already buy in Ghana, buy properties
Mm.
in Ghana. Some Nigerians buy property in Nairobi. Some buy in South Africa. Some South
Yeah,
Africans may be interested to buy property in Ghana as well. And I found people, especially in some particular African countries, are interested in buying property in other African countries as well. And
yeah,
so you are finding, even it's very interesting. I talked about obviously the gap between the diaspora and the continent, but you're right, even within the continent, there's a gap there itself. I haven't been
yes,
to a lot of I hope to sort of visit a lot more of it. I've been lucky
yeah.
to
Me
be to
too.
a few. Yeah, I've been to a few: South Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, and Nigeria, but I haven't been to, there's 50 something countries. I haven't been to a lot of them. And I think it's something important that has to be cultivated. It has to be very much a long-term strategy to cultivate that sense. But I think, again, social media has helped a lot of these
Yeah,
things, because fortunately for us, we didn't really learn these things in school. It's not something that was really taught to us by
yes.
parents like that. Not really. Maybe some names like Kwame Nkrumah are known, but it's as I grew older that I knew Thomas Sankara. It was not a name that was spoken about in my household or in my schools like that. But you're
Mm.
finding that social media has helped bring some of these things to the fore. We're much more curious now about what's going on out there, what products are being sold here, etc. So these things are happening organically. And I guess the question is, at what point will the governments, of course, the governments have at least signed the bill saying they are
The
happy with
bill,
NAFTA.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, and there are organizations. So there's the East African, organizations, the West African, there's the South African. So those have always kind of been there.
Yeah.
You have the African Union, but how do we get it to the point where it's almost seamless? And I'll say some of that is infrastructure. So I'll say that, and even more than anything, I think if you were to ask me what is the first thing I would do, if you were to ask me personally, I would say infrastructure. So just a train ride, train from here to here,
Mm.
or a very nice road going from here to here. Those two things, obviously, plane rides are there, but plane rides, if you've ever tried traveling across the continent on a
Yeah.
plane from one African country to another, it can be a big, big headache, especially if you're not going to the normal South Africa or Kenya. If you are going to Guinea, you might have to go to South Africa first
Really?
before you go to Guinea. Yeah, sometimes it can get very crazy. Maybe it's not that crazy, but sometimes it can get very crazy as to how you get
Wow.
there, especially depending on the day you want to go there. Because some days maybe they don't have the flights, you have to go to two stops before you get there. So even
Mm.
sorting some of that is very important. But if we could create
Wow.
highways, even that is the simplest, just very good highways, straight road going from here all the way to Nairobi.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a straight road doing that.
All the
Very
way
nice route that is always,
there.
that would be very good.
Mm.
Obviously, a train will also be very good. Obviously, these things are not as easy as I'm saying it, but it does need a level of coordination between certain countries. Hey, let's get this done. Let's put our minds. What is the issue? Let's sort it out. Let's build a train from here to here. Because once you look at the United
Yeah.
States, one of the reasons why they were, because the United States is a big continent. I mean, it's a continent itself when you think about it. It's a country, but it's a
It's
continent.
actually a continent.
Yeah, it's a continent itself. When you think about how big.
Yeah. Mm.
And one of the ways in which they were able to form trade between themselves is because
Mm.
they created these train tracks to move products and people back and forth. Because I think one
Yeah.
thing you have to do is you have to make it easier for people to
Using
travel.
Japanese.
Exactly, exactly. You have to make it easy for people to travel here and there because for me, I've been exposed. I've seen what the things in South Africa that hey, maybe I want to sort of take some of this to Ghana. I've seen similar in Rwanda, in Kenya. So I've been exposed to a certain
Mm.
level, but I think it's important other people, like everybody is exposed to that level all
Mm.
the way to anybody who wants to go can get a cheap enough train ride to go to wherever and see what's going on there, whether it's for tourism first, for business, etc. I think that is a baby step to get it there because once people begin to see what's because
Mm.
when I go to Nairobi and I see, oh, like even this street looks like a street in Ghana, you can see the similarities between the
Exactly.
people, yeah, certain
Mm.
things
Yes.
that makes it much easier to come together
Mm.
as one, than it is to try and tell people that they should do it, right? So that's my 1 2 on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's just we just need to be exposed. That's true. Because if you never been in let's say in Egypt, or you have never been in Tunisia, understanding those culture of Arabic and the way that they live, it's easy to forget that those people are Africans
Yeah,
because we've never been there. We don't understand the way that they are living. Only see them on TV, and they don't look like us.
yeah,
Most of them,
yeah.
they don't look like us. So we tend to uh turn a blind eye on them, on noticing that we
Mm.
could really do bigger things with them as well. We can put them involved in even in your project. You can involve countries because they are very close to you. Countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and Sudan. Those countries are very close to you in West Africa. So those are other things that we need to rally around, closing the gap between us as Africans and Africans who are Arabic, because that gap is very wide. The person that was trying to build that gap was Muammar Gaddafi, and
Mm.
who was killed in a way that was brutal, and it was sort of a show off for the Western countries, which we're not gonna get into it now. But his death was sort of a situation where they were trying to show that if you think you are smart, that's where you're going that's where your faith is. Because look at how Libya is now. Look at how Libya was 20 years before. You see those kind of things. Muammar Gaddafi introduced the lot that they're talking about even now was introduced by him, and it was pushed by him. He was the one that was in the forefront of that law of making sure that we trade together, and also the ECOWIS, that which is West Africa, right? The ECOWIS.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was in the forefront of that. He made sure that a lot of programs and projects are taking place for us as Africans to unite. But then his fate was made very short. So with the people who are still pushing this thing of us as Africans and the African Americans trying to divide us, because I see a lot of that, most especially in these social networks on Twitter. They formed groups that called FBA. A lot of lot of issues in between us Africans and African Americans. Uh, we are trying to close that gap, but the thing is now there are people who are benefiting from that because they are pushing that agenda and they are getting clicks and they are getting views from YouTube, and they are monetizing this on their benefit. So, what is your message for people who are in who are African Americans who are part of those groups? How can we do what can we do to change their minds and make sure that we, instead of bashing each other and insulting each other, we come together and collaborate?
Yeah, certainly you are right about a lot of the points that you hit there, and I'll say this. I've obviously I've never lived as an African American. I don't know their story in that real way as well, in terms of living under a society where you're a minority within the group, and you're oppressed in many different ways, psychologically, physically, economically. And I think sometimes,
Yeah.
and my just opinion on this is that sometimes what that creates is a certain level of scarcity mindset, where you believe that
Mm,
there's only a certain limited pool of resources out there, and I better make sure I get my slice of that pie, right? And
mm,
I can't fault them for thinking that way, but I think what you can we can try to do is try to enlighten them on the importance of collaboration, and then essentially what they, as I mentioned, the opportunities are out there. Because what you find is that the reason why a lot of people believe that there's that scarcity issue is because they've been trained to believe that the continent is nothing. There's nothing
yeah.
there that can be done there. When you realize that all these mining companies are there, all the cocoa is taken up to the Suez, gold is extracted, all of these
Mm,
things are here on the continent, right? And you find that but they believe that there's a scarcity issue, right? And so, why is it that we are finding, there's only Westerners here sometimes, and coming here to extract these? Why have we not found
mm.
more African Americans, coming to do that? I think one of the
Yeah,
issues
to
has to do
extract, yes. Mm,
propaganda, right? And so, of course, like I said, we'll take money that is collaborative always, uh,
mm,
uh, on the continent, and so that is what we want more of. And so, obviously, the Chinese also have come with their investment in there, and it's a good buffer to the West. But also, they have their
mm.
challenges and issues as well. We want the African American core to come in there as part of a challenger to these groups as well, and to say we also have the offerings that we can do as well. These here are things we
Yes.
can do as well, right? And maybe sometimes not easy to challenge these two big powerhouses, but there are certain areas where they can definitely be involved in and can
They can
attain a
start
certain
small.
level. Exactly that,
Mm,
right? And the thing is that
mm,
it's a culture that is very similar to theirs in a lot of ways. They've realized when they eat the food, when they see the dances, the music, it all hits something in their conscious, in the back of their
Exactly.
head somewhere. And so there's that connection already, and so we can vibe in that way already. Business should be easier because of that as well. And obviously, they should just make sure that they find the right partners on the ground and then sort of and execute. So I think really the issue has been that level, the scarcity. Just people believe
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there isn't an abundance out there to be had, and once once
Mm,
once that's the case, then that's when you see infighting. But once everybody's fed, we all okay. So that's really the thing. We need to feed a lot more people, get them to the point where they are sustained and satisfied at a physiological level and a mental level, and then from there, I think things become much easier, and we can all just work together.
very true. Very true. Just we're about to get to the end of this interview. It's a few points that I want to talk about before we get into the closing. The first point is the issue of corruption in Africa that we cannot escape.
Yeah.
How developing as Africans that the issue of corruption.
Yeah, the issue of corruption, not an easy one to solve, but I also want to say that it's probably something that permeates every culture, not just the continent of Africa.
Exactly.
Uh, my
Exactly.
former employer used to say that uh, um, it used to be called below the table in the United States, and then they changed it from below to lobby, and now they just lobby the government, right? And so, in a lot of ways, it's something that occurs
Oh,
all over the world. But certainly, perhaps you could say it's a bit more rampant, depending on who
mm,
you ask, a bit more rampant on the continent. And that certainly, because of where we are at as a continent,
yeah,
we
yeah.
cannot allow for it to be at a high level. You can never kill it completely, I don't think, my personal opinion, but certainly it should not be at the level where it's
Mm,
at, looking at where the continent is today, right? And so I think for that
yeah.
to, and it's very interesting you bring that point. So I think there are a few things. Government cannot do everything. That's also something to always consider as
No.
well, right? They can't do everything. And so I do that burden, I don't place on them. And I think what
Mm-mm.
should happen, what any useful government should be really looking to do is put people in place that are competent, but also at the very least also create an environment where the private sector is leading a lot of efforts, because at the very least, even though a private sector individual can be a fraudulent individual, they are definitely more incentivized, you know, to provide a service or product, right? That ensures that they are making money, and also they don't go to prison, right? Sometimes much harder for those in the government to be put to task, but a private sector individual certainly much easier.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I looked at land. And it's very interesting. I'm working with a group of chiefs in Ghana
Yeah.
who have large access to acres and thousands of acres of land, but they are not able to get a loan based on their land. They're not able to get equity in based on their land. Why? Because global
Wow.
investors, anybody else, they don't trust that these are the owners of the land, right? But if they
Oh,
could, yeah, that's the thing. And so that's really an issue all across the continent, not just in Ghana. A lot of these chiefs are unable
wow.
to access capital based on their collateral, and that's true for
Based
a
on
high.
land.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. That's based for a chief or even a small family who has land, because it's very hard to designate who owns what, etc. And so we're building out a platform for them, a land registry platform for them. In fact, this platform was first piloted in South Africa, in Kailicha near Cape Town, where we built a platform that allowed individuals who owned homes, but their homes weren't registered, to put in the necessary documentation and register
Mm,
their homes at the Cape Town Land Registry. And so we're building a platform similarly for these chiefs, where all their
mm,
documentation all the coordinates of the land are all on a platform and it sits on the blockchain. And obviously, we'll work with the
Okay.
governments to ensure that the information is secure, right? The information is
Yeah.
true. But once it's true and we put it on
Yes.
the blockchain, now it's all very transparent. And that will then give
Mm.
confidence to investors. Okay, you own X and X and X. Okay, the valuation of
Mm.
this property is X and X and X. Okay, you
Okay.
attain revenues X and X from this. Okay, based on this, I can give you a loan, right? Or okay, based on this, I can do a joint venture with you on a development
Mm.
here, on a school, on a hospital, on whatever it is, right? And so that's
Yes. On a
creating
bridge.
generational, exactly. It's creating generational
Mm.
wealth for the
Mm.
chiefs as well, where they can partner with whoever, whether it's Chinese investor, whether it's a Asia, a Western investor, whether it's a Black American investor, they can also attain the value of their land as well and attain wealth. My goal is to make a lot of the chiefs in Africa billionaires. Let's make them they're
Yes.
supposed to be billionaires. They own all of this
They're
land. They're,
supposed to,
they're
with so
supposed to be
much
billionaires.
hectares of land that they have, they should be
Exactly.
billionaires.
They should be. They should be. They should be growing farm crops on there, whatever it is. They have the land. They should be able to easily partner with partners who are credible and have the capital or know-how, right, to execute on some of these projects. And the reason why most people don't try, and in fact, one of our investors, he invested in us just because of this. He at first he
Mm.
was in manufacturing, and his company asked him to look for a site to set up a factory, and he said it took him 2 years to find land because he would go, someone would
Wow.
lie to him that this is the land, someone would they would all lie him and try and scam him, right? It took him 2 years to do
Wow.
this, and
That's
so you
that's
think about it, this is just one company. How many
wow.
people have tried this, right? Where they just can't find the owner and they don't even bother. Hey, I don't want to even
Mm.
bother doing this, right? But if it was very easy, a lot of people would do it. And so that is all part of what we are trying to do here, where we just want to make it easy for people to transact, whether it's just one person trying to buy, land for $5,000, all the way up to companies trying to buy land for millions of dollars, right? So we want to sit in the middle between all of those transactions, big or small. We just want to make legitimate transactions
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a mouthful. The second question is about the trading in Africa. And the lack of manufacturing that is being on the decline for the past 20 years, with our manufacturers and industries being closed in various countries. Talking Ghana, the tomato industry is being closed. South Africa, the chicken industry is being closed. Mozambique, a lot of industries are being closed. All we get now is import of all these things that we use to manufacture ourselves. The import of tomatoes from China, import of tomatoes from Italy, and all these countries. Import of chicken, because what they do, they go to wholesalers and or even farm markets and offer very, very, very cheap products to those markets. So people are buying those cheap products and the manufacturers end up not being able to maintain or sustain their businesses based on that. So what is your take on that, on these kind of manufacturers that we had as Africans, now that we know we don't have anymore, and
Yeah.
they are
So that
declining, and a lot of them are still being closed?
Yeah, no, these are very good points and very, very big issues. You're right, across the continent in terms of ensuring that we're getting those manufacturing, those transactions rolling through our that creates jobs, creates sort of revenues as well for the country.
And
And I'll
wealth,
say
yes.
yeah, wealth as well. So I'll say there's a few things. Oh, I mean, I always tie things to land, but land is a big part of it as
Yes.
well. 'Cause again, a big question around that. I remember actually a discussion I had with the chiefs was that there was a gentleman who really wanted to set up a chicken farm in Ghana, came from the states,
Mm.
And again, he bought land and ended up being in court for 5 years because it was
Wow.
illegitimate land, right? And he decided he would just get out,
Ah.
he'd just leave, right? So that's even again one example of a gentleman. He is again he was a Ghanaian living abroad, and he wanted to
Ah.
come back, and he bought the land, and it ended up being illegitimate land, right? So again, that is one issue.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one issue in itself, right? Just it's an
Mm.
issue. Again, you think about, you don't really think about it that hard. You think there are other issues out there, and certainly there are, in terms of maybe government reforms around import export, what can be import. These are things that need to be done. Policies around maybe taxation, regulations. These are all necessary things, but sometimes you forget that land is a big part of this whole equation as well,
It is.
and that to set up that factory, to set up that farm, to set up the manufacturing plants, you need to secure a good piece of land in a secure
Land,
location,
yes.
right? Secure
Mm.
location allows you to do this business, and so it's something that even stops people from even thinking about the other issues that need to be sorted out, right? And so I
Mm.
think that is a big part of what we are trying to do: create pockets of lands, areas where, okay, maybe this place is good for planting tomatoes, maybe this place is good
Yeah.
for doing pig farming, whatever it is, right? And then we can build industries from there. But certainly there are certain elements where I don't have any control over, where in terms of government policies, in terms of ensuring that there's
Yeah.
that necessary infrastructure, roads, trains, those things are very, very important as well, added to what I said about land. Those other elements definitely need to be sorted out. And that's something that individuals need to lobby their government to get to a certain point. But certainly
Yeah.
today, even certain industries can be done today, even with the way we do it, to at least supplement domestic consumption, right?
Yes.
Lots of
Mm.
Ghanaians love pigs. Yeah, mega
Yes.
pig. Lots of Ghanaians love chicken. You can
Mm.
provide them with that element as well. And so
And all your food got tomatoes.
tomatoes, all of that. You're exactly right, because even for a fact, one of the things issues in Ghana in particular, and I find that South Africa food is much cheaper in South Africa than it is
Very.
in Ghana.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and one of the reasons that you obviously there's a heavier agricultural sector there than in
Yes.
Ghana, unfortunately, right? And
Mm.
so we're suffering for it with a high inflation because of that, because we're exporting way too much, right? And so you
Mm.
find that a lot of people now are trying to look for local local substitutes, right? And obviously there's a negative with inflation, high negative, but maybe the positive is that maybe more people are going to look to consume locally instead, and it spurs on entrepreneurs to get to that level. But I have to say that there are certain things that need to be done to assist entrepreneurs with getting this done, and these are some of the elements that I mentioned right now.
Yeah. A part of it that we still have a big industrial, agricultural industry here is because we still have a lot of white people controlling it. So it's not easy. It's not easy for for white people to be being corrupted and also being taken advantage of, because some
Yeah,
of the reasons why a lot of industries are closed in African countries is because our brothers are being taken advantages of by
yeah,
certain groups of people, even the government, even the people from other countries would come and uh, promise them this and that and scam them and end up closing those sort of farms. The reason why us as South Africans is because white people are still a huge amount of owning a huge amount of wealth here, and are controlling those kind of businesses, because this is why we're still leading in import and export of in export mainly of agricultural product like your grapes, wine, and all these other things. That's the reason. If it wasn't for that, we will be in the similar problem that you guys are in now, in terms of shortage of food, or or high amount of money that you need to pay to secure a little bit of food and stuff like that. So before we close, let's talk about the tourism and the last tour that you have. What are sort of the stories that you can tell that came out of it that will be motivational for other people to come.
Yeah. And so obviously Ghana is a little bit of a special case. So the president put forth the year of return campaign in
Yeah,
2018,
yeah, I
formulated,
remember that. Mm.
and it was very successful in bringing a lot of African Americans to Ghana. In fact, in that December January period, we had about 1 million people come to Ghana, flood
Wow,
Ghana at that time,
wow.
and now it's going to be 1 million again in this 2022. It dipped a little bit, obviously,
COVID,
COVID
yes,
and
yes.
whatnot, but it's jumping back to that number. So Ghana is going to be packed, and a large
Yeah.
contingent of that is African Americans. And so we at least salute the president in that regard, that he put this together
Mm,
for the country, because it's been very beneficial to the tourism sector in the country, and I think it'll be beneficial as a whole in other aspects. And so for this particular tour, it was very interesting. We had a group come here, mostly individuals in like late 30s, early
mm.
40s, coming here, who it's from a group called Black Women Invest. Although we had
Okay,
a good amount of men come through as well. But Black Women Invest, which is a Facebook group of about 12,000 women who are seeking to be
okay.
financially savvy with their lives. And it was very interesting. We connected with that group, and they were very, very interested in the continent as a whole, but of course
Mm,
Ghana, because they had heard a lot and wanted to understand, what are the options there for them in terms of investments,
mm.
repatriation, and then maybe finally retirement, right? And so those are
Yes.
typically the conversations we have from a lot of these individuals. And you find on the investment side, it's been shown that the two fastest growing Airbnb countries in the world are Ghana and Nigeria, with South Africa right there as
Mm,
well. And so Africa has seen a large uptick in Airbnb and tourism, people coming to the continent, spending their tourism dollars instead of going to the Eiffel Tower in Paris or wherever else. They're coming to Accra, Ghana, their Joburg,
the
etc.,
wall of China.
the wall of China, all of these other places. Instead, they're coming here, right?
Mm,
And then what's also changing a little bit is, instead of people as retiring to Florida, Atlanta, even sometimes Mexico, African Americans, they're thinking, why don't I come
mm.
retire on the continent? And so the trip was beneficial
Yeah.
in that sense, that it like a lot of the questions or stuff people had in their minds were helped to answer. And sometimes it's better to see it. I can tell you all the stuff I can tell you, but until you see it, it's very different. And it was very exciting for the group to, so it's they met some African Americans, and we met a very interesting gentleman who lived a bit on the outskirts of Accra, about 90 minutes from Accra. And he just said, hey, come see my home. So that wasn't part of the trip at all. He said, hey, come
Ah,
see my home. And we went to see his house by the beach. He's built a lovely 3-story home. The top
wow.
floor, he's right there by the beach. You can see the beach, and he's probably like in like 70-year-old guy, maybe late 60s. And
Mm,
he's come there with his wife and has decided, he's going to live here. And similarly, in
mm.
another place called Cape Coast, which is about 3-hour drive, 4-hour drive from the capital. Similarly, a gentleman there, he's now become a chief in the village there, and he came
Wow.
20, 30 years ago and decided he would
Mm.
make Ghana his home. So he came early, and now he's seeing the benefits that people are coming back.
Yeah.
And so we find that, so that was actually great for my group to chat with these people, because it's almost like, oh,
Mm.
someone saw the vision long ago before it started being cool.
Tamako, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And they understood, I'm living a better life here than I ever would have in the States,
Yes.
so I'd rather be
Mm.
here. And so for X and X reasons. So I think that is sometimes the eye-opening thing, because as we started off this call with, there's been a lot of propaganda media around, hey, Africa is dirt, it's dirt, there's
Yeah.
nothing happening here. But then to see someone who's been here for 30 years, and he said
Mm.
he didn't listen to any of that. He's been here for 30 years. His life is here. He's living a great life here. He's happy. He's living. He eats good food, breathes good air. Doesn't have to deal with any oppressive tactics, anything like
Yeah.
that,
The
right?
police, being stopped by
Yeah,
the police and,
exactly.
and be scared.
Exactly. He doesn't see the police in Ghana, and he's not scared. He can joke with the police, can relax.
Mm.
You know, these are the things that sometimes when people come here, it's just eye opening to them. Things that you can't even tell them; they have to feel it and see it. So that was what
Mm,
was very useful. It was almost like, even for me, seeing Ghana through their eyes, right? And so that's
yeah.
what's always very interesting for me, right?
Wow.
And you end up even seeing things that you haven't even seen as a Ghanaian yourself, and
Wow.
understand, oh, what this is what's happening even in my own country, and so it's good to even see for myself. And so there's a lot going on, outside of just me, Cecil. There are a lot of people doing things in Ghana, on the continent as a whole, and we just want to be a big part of
A
that.
part of it. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That I'm very grateful, my man, for this conversation. I'm sure people have learned so much because I've learned so much about the opportunities that we have that we are not utilizing. The importance of land that we are not utilizing, because I have a huge amount of land also in the Eastern Cape where
Okay.
my forefathers were staying. They left us a lot of land there.
Oh, okay.
Now that we have this conversation, I'm thinking now, what can I do with that huge piece of land there to make it something that will make wealth for me and my and generations to come. Those are the conversations that I need to have in my head now. That this conversation ignited something in me, so I'm very grateful for that. Lastly, I heard that in many conversation that I've listened to, the guy, you know, Chance the Rapper.
Yes, yes, I know Chance the Rapper.
Yeah, he's been speaking so much about Ghana. Apparently, he was here in Johannesburg for I think for holidays, and then he went to Ghana, and then he was introduced to the lifestyle, the teaching of Kwame Nkrumah, and his statues, and how he advocated for Africa and all that. So he's very fascinated with Africa. He's even I think at the beginning of next year, he's planning a huge a festival that is going to be there. So if you can just go through some of these interviews that he's been in the Breakfast Club, you can check that out. You can check also in the 85 South show, which is a podcast, and try to get the details, because he mentioned the dates there. So I'm not sure about the dates. So maybe you can source some people for tourism, because there are a lot of people who are interested to come to that festival that he's been talking about. So please check that out. It will be beneficial for you, because he's been talking a lot about going back to Ghana, and people are seeing the comments. People wants to go with him. People wants to visit. People wants to be there. So you can source and find out about it from the people who are there in Ghana, who are organizing it, and then we can try to get people who are trying to come and watch it, to accommodate them, and also give them some of the experience there. So this is something that I thought of while we were talking now.
100%, 100%. And yeah, I do know about Chance the Rapper. He was in Ghana a few months ago, and he's putting together a concert as well in Ghana. I do intend to be there as well myself. And like I said, Ghana is, I would say, at a blessed period in terms of tourism booming in, celebrities coming into our country. Dwayne Wade was
Mm.
here just last week. We had Usher here at a concert about a month and a half or so ago. So
Kendrick
we are
Lamar
lucky.
was there.
Yeah. We're blessed in that sense, and we should. I think what we need to ensure is that we don't let this period go to waste, and we ensure
Yes.
that we are utilizing these resources in the best manner. So that's my only thing, to ensure that we are not just resting on our laurels, because I know that Ghana will not. I know for a fact Ghana will not be the only place out there. There are other countries that people will want to go to see as things move on. But Ghana is at least a good first place to go to, and we need to ensure that we stay at the level where people want to keep coming back, right? And they have a reason to come back. So that's why owning a property is always a good reason to come back. Owning a
Yeah.
business, etc. So
Very true.
that's all part of
Yeah.
it. So exactly that. But I think it'll stretch across. I've loved being in South Africa. I loved Kenya myself, Rwanda, Nigeria is also very interested in certain areas as well. So all of these places have their opportunities, their perks, their own little things. And I think what will
Mm.
happen is that the love will get spread out. So Ghana should ensure that while we have a lot of the love today, we're making sure that we're executing properly, like you said, to ensure that it stays there for a
Yes,
while.
yes, and collaborate and execute.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thanks, my man. Thank you very much. This was very fruitful, and I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for having me on, and I look forward to seeing this on all your platforms.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.